Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of Vintage Rhythm Section by Funk Soul Productions. Vintage Rhythm Section is a new KONTAKT virtual instrument. You can use it with full version of KONTAKT, but it also comes with a KONTAKT player, so you don't need the full version of KONTAKT to use it. The library contains 3 different main sections. There's R&B, jazz, and rock instruments. Now, all of these instruments were recorded with vintage mics and analog gear, and we really wanted to capture just the grittiness and the analogness of the sounds that were coming from the 60s and 70s. So we can take a look at some of these folders here. Open up the R&B folder. You see there's basses, drums, guitars, keyboards, and percussion. In the jazz folder, you'll have the exact same thing. Rock folder, same thing. There's no percussion though. So let's take a look now at the interface of Vintage Rhythm Section. There's actually 2 different interfaces that you'll be using. The one for the regular instruments like the keys and the guitars, and there's also a drum interface. It's going to have a mixer on board, and you'll see that in a second. So here we just have a warm Wurlitzer from the R&B section, and on the front you can see we have tape saturation, which we can turn on and off, and of course increase or decrease the amount. Treble and bass for your high end and low end EQ. Darken that up a little bit. Warm it up with some bass there. And a distortion. We also have a delay setting on here. Right now it's selected to bypass, so you can go ahead and click the drop-down menu. Select the type of delay you want, if you want it dotted, 8th note. You also have doubler, slap, ping pong, and damped. So you have a few different options there for your delay setting. The bottom row here has a rotator. Which you can select either a slow rotation sound or fast. And then we come to the reverb section here, and we have a number of different convolution reverbs you can choose from. So let's just hear how that sounds as we turn up this spring plate. Let's try something else here. And finally, a mod wah. So that's your basic interface and the controls you have to further change and define your sound that you're using. Let's go ahead and look at the drum interface now. As you can see, it's pretty typical for virtual drum instruments. You have your faders for your different instruments, kick, snare, hi-hat, etc. Solo and mute on each one, panning, reverb, which sends to whatever convolution reverb you have selected up here. So for example, with the snare, you can have it completely dry or really wet if you want. Bass and treble, and then on your master fader you have compression and saturation as well that you can add to the entire mix of your drums. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at some of the different instruments and sounds that are available in the different sections of this library. So we're going to start with the R&B section. And again, in each section, you have multiple instruments to choose from. So let's go ahead and start by listening to the 70s funk bass. Okay, and if you notice here in the bottom, there's 3 red keys below the playable range. Those are key switches. So we're going to listen to the second key switch here on C sharp, and that is your staccato bass samples. And finally, the last key switch, which is your slap bass. Okay, now let's go ahead and pull up one of the drums from the R&B section still. And again, there's 4 different drums here in the R&B drums, and we're listening to the Retro Soul kit. So we'll just play through some of the samples available and then play a little groove. Okay, now let's go to the guitar section of our R&B folder. And let's see what guitars we have available here. So you have, again, there's 5 different guitars here available, including a sitar, some Strats, Telecaster, and we're going to go ahead and check out that 70s funky Telecaster. So it's got a little grit already on the sample itself. Sounds really good. And again, on this one, we have a second key switch here with your muted guitar samples. Okay, cool. Moving on to the keys folder. We have in here a number of different analog keyboards from the 60s and 70s. And we're going to go ahead and listen to the Retro Soul Vibes. Okay, very cool. And now, finally, for the R&B section, let's listen to just some of the hand percussion that's available in the percussion folder. Also, there's bongos and congas also in there. Okay, so now you get an idea of what's in each of the folders in your different sections. So we're going to go and move to some of the jazz stuff now and listen to the upright bass from our jazz folder. And you can see here at the top, there's also the green section, which has a couple of different slide effects from the bass. Okay, now let's listen to a jazz, Rhodes Clean Jazz is the name of this particular patch. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and move on and now listen to some of the rock patches we have. Here's the Brit Rock drums. And finally, we're going to go ahead and check out the rock guitars folder, and we're going to pull up the Clean Tremolo surf guitar. I really like this one. Okay, and last but not least, you'll also notice there's a multis folder here. A number of different multis that bring up classic different rhythm sections from retro soul, Detroit soul, soul jazz rhythm sections, and we'll pull up one of those. So it looks basically something like this here. This is the Brit Rock rhythm section. Comes just preloaded with your drums, your bass, a guitar, some sort of keys, and percussion in this case. So and there's 20 or so of those as well. So looking at vintage rhythm section as a whole, there's 67 patches in total in R&B, jazz, and rock styles. You have it's actually 19 multis that are included, and in total there's 7.5 gigabytes of compressed data. Well, that's about it for the vintage rhythm section walkthrough. Thank you for watching. Come check out bigfishaudio.com where you can read more and hear demos from vintage rhythm section.